Hello, our question today actually comes from a sermon I preached about the relationship between Jesus and his mother Mary. And using the passage from John, in John chapter 19, verse 26, Jesus says, "Woman, this is your son." And the question was, that seems a little disrespectful. What is going on there? And yes, with our attuned ears culturally and from our context, that sounds incredibly rude to say to somebody, "Woman, what are you doing? Woman, this is yours." That doesn't sound very good. But what we need to recognize is, how was that phrase or that word being utilized in Jesus' day? And what we can find is that actually it was a common way of addressing women back in Jesus' day. And it's not just something that's done to Jesus' mother, but also to other women throughout the Gospels. So the Canaanite woman who approaches Jesus because her daughter is sick and she wants Jesus to heal her daughter. In the Gospel account of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 28, you will hear him refer to her as woman and address her that way. The servant girl that recognizes Peter after the betrayal of Jesus, Peter is warming himself by a fire at night. She recognizes him and asks him, weren't you with this guy? And she's referred to as woman also in the gospel account of Luke, chapter 22, verse 57. And then the Samaritan woman. This is the woman at the well. And she has an incredibly deep theological conversation with Jesus and eventually becomes a convert and tries to get her entire town to come and experience Jesus. That Samaritan woman also is referred to as woman in John chapter 4, verse 21. And not only was it at the cross that Jesus' mother is referred to as woman, but also Jesus does this at the beginning of John chapter 2, verse 4 at the wedding of Cana, where he says, "Woman, what does that have to do with you or me?" So what we end up finding out is that was kind of a colloquial term that was used to describe women. Now, in our modern sensibilities, that sounds very rude to identify somebody by their gender like that and not to use their name or their actual relationship. However, in this culture where women weren't a stand-alone being, in a culture where women were depicted and understood based upon the relationship to a male figure, whether that was the patriarch of their family, their husband, or their adult son that was taking care of them, it's important to recognize here that even by referring to these persons as woman, Jesus is recognizing that, and the others that are referring to him that way, that they are in and of themselves a person, that they aren't just a value because of to whom they are related, but that independently they are. And some of these people were considered almost less than human, the Canaanite woman and the Samaritan woman, and servants weren't always looked upon very well either. But to see them as a person and to acknowledge their personhood, that was a pretty big shift in the scriptures. So when we hear woman, of course, to us it sounds patronizing. It sounds like we're using that term in such a way that can demean or belittle, but that was not how it was used in those days. And this was a society that Jesus was immersed in that was very genderized. It was driven around making sure that we understood our places and that we maintained our purity code. And so acknowledging gender was par for the course in those days. So while there are things that they did in the Bible that we wouldn't continue doing, that's probably one of them. But we do hope that if you take a look at the context, that you see that their interactions and their testimonies and their desire to engage with the story of Jesus is what makes all of these women an important part of our gospel narratives, and that ultimately they are of incredible value to the story and give us one more way in which we can see ourselves in the text. So we hope that gives you a little bit of insight, and if it raises more questions, we'd love to know. Leave us a message on our Facebook page, or you can leave it in the comments of the video, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks for the question. We always appreciate engaging with what's on your mind and in your heart.